Good morning. Myself Shivaranjani, Unit 4, The Revolt of 1857, page number 38, Side heading Objectives. In the earlier units, you have already been familiarized with the various aspects relating to imperialism and colonialism. You are aware that during the period of its rule over the country, the East India Company exploited and harassed the Indian people, although various sections of Indian people defied the English supremacy at different times. It was a great uprising of 1857, often termed as the First War of Independence, that posed a serious challenge to the English supremacy at an all India level. After reading this unit, you will be able to trace the causes of uprising of 1857, know about the various events and conflicts and about the role of various sections of people as well as their leaders, identify the reasons where the English authority was most severely challenged during 1857, determine the reasons for the failure of the revolt, and understand its impact and form an opinion about the nature of the revolt. Side heading Introduction. The revolt of 1857 forms one of the most important chapters in the history of the struggle of the Indian people for liberation from the British rule. It shocks the foundations of the British Empire in India, and at some point it seemed as though the British rule would end for all time to come. What started merely as a sepoy mutiny soon engulfed the peasantry and other civilian population over wide areas in northern India. The upsurge was so widespread that some of the contemporary observers called it a national revolt. The hatred of the people for the Ferengis was so intense and bitter that one observer, W. H. Russell, was forced to write, "In no instance is a friendly glance directed to the white man's courage. Oh, that language of the eye! Who can doubt? Who can misinterpret it? It is by it alone that it has learned our phrase is not even feared at times by many, and that by all it is disliked." In this unit, we will tell you about the various aspects relating to this great uprising. Side heading Causes. How did the revolt break out? What were its causes? The main reason for this was the ruthless exploitation of Indian people by the British. The British rule, which was formally established after the Battle of Plassey in 1757 in Bengal, strove to fill the coffers of the East India Company at the expense of the Indians. The East India Company was governed by greedy merchants and traders who could go to any extent to enrich themselves. The company was formed in 1600 and was given a royal charter by Queen Elizabeth, which conferred on it the exclusive privilege to trade with the East. Its main aim to assume the trade monopoly in India. It was not an ordinary merchant company formed for trade, but had its train of soldiers who fought battles with the Portuguese and the French trading companies in the 17th and 18th centuries in order to establish its trade monopoly. After this rival power has been defeated, it also tried to humble the Indian traders who offered competition. When the Battle of Plassey was won in 1757, the British successfully imposed their trade monopoly over the area under their control, eliminated competition from the Indian traders, and forced the artisans to sell their products to them. The artisans were now paid so low that they could hardly survive. The legend has it that the weavers of Daga cut their thumbs to protest against such low payments by the East India Company for their superb work on muslin renowned for its fine texture. Side heading Exploitation of Peasantry. Although the trade monopoly enriched the East India Company considerably. Its main source of income was now derived from the land. After entrenching itself in Bengal, it spread its power in India through wars and treaties. To extract as much money as possible, it devised new system of land settlements, permanent Royatwari and Mahalviri, each more oppressive than the other. The permanent settlements, which was effective in Bengal Presidency and in large parts of North India, did not recognize the hereditary rights of the peasants on land, which they had earlier enjoyed. The loyal jamindaris and revenue collectors were now given the proprietary proprietary rights on land. The cultivators were reduced to the status of single tenants, but even the newly created landlords were now given the absolute rights. Their situation was also deliberately left very precarious. They had to pay the company 10 by 11th of the entire rent derived from the cultivators, and if they failed to do so, their property was sold to others. The other land settlements were no better. In all of these, the peasants had to pay beyond their means, and adverse, adverse natural shifts like droughts or flood compelled them to go for loans to money lenders who charged exorbitant interest. This made the peasants too heavily indebted that they were ultimately forced to sell their lands to these money lenders. It is because of this the money lenders were so hated in rural society. The peasantry was also oppressed by petty officials in administration who extracted money on the slightest pretext. If the peasants went to the law court to seek redress of their grievances, they were bound to be totally ruined. When the crop was good, the peasants has to pay back their past debts. If it was bad, they were further indebted. This nexus between lower officials, law courts, and money lenders created a vicious circle which made the peasantry desperate and ready to welcome any opportunity for change of their regime. Siding alienation of the middle and upper strata of Indians. It was no merely the peasantry that got alienated from the British rule. The middle and upper strata Indians also felt oppressed. During the period of the Mughals or even in the administration of local princes and chieftains, the Indians served at all the places, both lower and higher. The disappearance of these Indian states and their replacement by the British administration deprived the Indians of the higher posts, which were now taken mainly by the British. The Indians now served only as subordinates and on other petty positions in the administration. Even the most brilliant of Indians were subordinated to the second or third rate Britishers who, as the matter of the right, grabbed all the higher paid positions. Furthermore, the cultural personals like poets, dramatists, writers, musicians, etc., who were earlier employed by the native states were now thrown out. The religious men like Pandits and Maulvis also lost all their former power and prestige. Side heading: Annexation of princely states. The East India Company did not spare even its former allies. The native state of Awadh was annexed by Dalhousie in 1856 on the pretext that Nawab Wasif Ali Shah was mismanaging the state. Even before this, he had annexed Satara in 1848 and Nagpur and Jhansi in 1854 on the pretext that the rulers of these states had no natural heir to succeed themselves after their death. This annexation embarrassed the rulers of the states, making Rani of Jhansi and Begum Begums of Awadh, staunch enemies of the British. Further, the British refusal to pay pension to Nana Sahib, the adopted son of Peshwa Bajirao II, worsened the situation. The annexation of Awadh was also resented by the sepoys, as most of whom came from there. These actions hurt their patriotic loyalty and sense of dignity. Moreover, since their relatives had now to pay more taxes on land, it adversely affected the purses of sepoys themselves. Siding the alien rule. Another important reason of the unpopularity of the British was the alien rule of the alien rule. They never mixed with the Indian people and treated even the upper class Indian with contempt. They had not come to settle in India but only to take money home. So the Indians could never develop any affinity towards them. Siding impact on the sepoys. The revolt of 1857 organized with the unity of the sepoys. These sepoys were drawn mainly from the peasant population of north and northwest India, as we have seen their rapacious policies followed by the East India Company, where IMPOVERISHING, impoverishing and ruining the peasantry. These must have affected the sepoys also. In fact, most of them had joined the military services in order to supplement their fast declining agricultural income. But as the years passed, they realized that their capacity for doing so declined. They were paid a monthly salary of 7 to 9 rupees, out of which they had to pay for their food, uniform, and transport of their private baggage. The cost of maintaining an Indian sepoy was only one third of these British counterpart in India. Moreover, the Indian sepoys was treated roughly by the British officers. They were frequently abused and humiliated. The Indian sepoys, despite his valor and great fighting capacity, could never rise above the rank of a subedar, while a fresh recruit from England was often appointed a superior overnight. Siding threat to religion. Apart from degrading service conditions, another factor inflamed the feeling of sepoys. An impression was created among that their religion was being attacked by the British. This belief was also shared by the general civilian population. The PROSELYTIZING proselytizing Jill of missionaries and some of their British officials instilled fear in the minds of the people that their religion was in danger. At several places, conversions to Christianity were reported to be made. The government maintained the chaplains at its own cost and in some cases also provide police protection to the missionaries. Even the army maintained chaplains at state cost, and Christian propaganda was carried among the sepoys. Furthermore, the sepoys were forbidden to wear their caste marks, and in 1856 an act was passed under which every new recruit had to give an undertaking to serve overseas if required. The conservative beliefs of the sepoys were thus shaken, and they sometimes reacted strongly. For example, in 1824, the 40th Regiment of the Sepoys at Barakpur refused to go to Burma by sea route because their religion forbade them to cross Blackwater The British reacted ruthlessly, disbanded the regiment, and put some of the leaders to death.
Continuation, page number 41. In 1844, 7 battalions revolted on the question of salaries and bhatta allowance. Even during the Afghan War from 1839 to 1842, the soldiers were almost on the verge of revolt. Like sepoys, the people of India had also risen in revolt against the oppressive British rule. The most important of these uprisings were the Kucha Rebellion 1816 to 32, the Call Uprising in 1831, and the Santhal Uprising in 1855 to 56. The most important, the main point with regard to the 1857 challenge, however, was the both the military and the civilian revolt merged, and this made it really formidable. Next side heading, the immediate cause. The atmosphere was so surcharged that even a small issue could lead to revolt. The episode of greased cartridges, however, was a big enough issue to start the rebellion on its own. Dry tinder box was there and only a spark was needed to set it ablaze. Cartridges of the new Enfield rifle, which had recently been introduced in the army, had a greased paper cover. Whole end had to be bitten off. Before the cartridge was loaded into rifle, the grease was in some instances made of pig beef and pig fat. This completely enraged the Hindu and Muslim sepoys and made them believe that the government was deliberately trying to destroy their religion. It was the immediate cause of the revolt. Next side heading, organization. What kind of organization did the rebels employ in order to raise their banner against the British? On this question, there has been a good deal of controversy among historians. One view is that there was a widespread and well organized conspiracy, while other view maintains that it was a completely spontaneous. The fact seemed to be that some kind of organized plan was in existence, but it had not matured sufficiently when the revolt broke out. As the rebels formed a clandestine setup, they did not keep any records also about the nature, functions, and structure of their secret organization. But the stories which have come down us come down to us talk about the red lotuses and chapatis, symbolizing freedom and bread being passed from village to village and from one regiment to another. Beside these means, speeches were also delivered and quiet preaching conducted by the roaming sannyasis and fakirs to mobilize and rally anti-colonial forces. All this stretched the sepoys to revolt. Next side heading, the rebellion. On 29th March 1857, a young soldier, Mangal Pandey, stationed at Barakpur, revolted single-handedly, attacking his British officers. He was hanged and not much notice was taken of this event. But it showed the resentment and anger aroused among the sepoys. Less than a month later, on 24th April, 90 men of the 33rd Navy Cavalry stationed at Meerut refused to the greased cartridges. 85 of these were dismissed and sentenced to 10 years imprisonment on 9th May. The rest of the Indian sepoys reacted strongly to this, and the next day, on 10th May, the entire Indian garrison revolted after freezing their comrades and killing the British officers, they decided to march on to Delhi. This shows that they did had in mind some sort of alternative to the British. Another thing which makes it clearly that it was not merely army unity was that the people from surrounding areas began to loot the military bazaars and attacked and burned the bungalows of the British as soon as they heard the shots fired by the sepoys on their officers. The Gujars from the surrounding villages poured into the city and joined the revolt. Telegraph wires were cut, and horsemen with warning messages to Delhi were intercepted. As soon as the sepoys from Meerut reached Delhi, the Indian garrison also revolted and joined the rebels. They now proclaimed the old Bahadur Shah as the emperor of the India. Thus, in 24 hours, what began as a simple unity has swelled into full-scale potential political rebellion. In the next 1 month, the entire Bengal army rose in revolt. Whole of north and northwest India was up in arms against the British in Aligarh, Manipuri, Bulandar Shah, Itwa, Mathura, Agra, Lucknow, Allahabad, Banaras, Shashabad, Dhanapur, and East Punjab. Wherever there were Indian troops, they revolted. Even the revolting army, the police, and local administration also collapsed. These revolts were also immediately followed by the rebellions in the city and countryside. But in several places, the people rose in revolts even before the sepoys. Wherever revolts broke out, the government treasury was plundered, the magazines sacked, barracks and courthouses were burnt, and the prison gates flung open. In the countryside, the peasants and the dispossessed jamindars attacked the moneylenders and new jamindars who had displaced them from the land. They destroyed the government records and moneylenders' account books. They attacked the British established law courts, revenue offices, revenue records, and thanas, police stations. Thus, the rebels tried to destroy all the symbols of colonial power. Even when the people of particular area did not rise in revolt, they offered their help and sympathies to the rebels. It was said that the rebellious sepoys did not have to carry food with them as they were fed by the villagers. On the other hand, their hostility to the British forces was pronounced. They refused to give them any help or information, and on many occasions they misled the British troops by giving wrong information. In central India also, where the rulers remained loyal to the British, the army revolted and joined the rebels. Thousands of Indore troops joined the rebellious and Jhansi. In the whole of north and central India, the British power was limited only to the towns of Agra and Lucknow. Elsewhere, the entire British army and administration fell like a house of cards. One of the most remarkable thing about the rebellion was its solid Hindu-Muslim unity. The Hindu sepoys of Meerut and Delhi unanimously proclaimed Bahadur Shah as their emperor. All the sepoys, whether Hindu or Muslim, accepted the suzerainty of the emperor and gave the call Chalo Delhi onward to Delhi. After their revolt, Hindu and Muslim fought together and died together. Wherever the sepoys reached, cow slaughter was banned as a mark of respect to the sentiment of Hindus. Check your progress 1. First question: how and by which sections was the peasantry exploited? Write in 10 lines. Next question: read the following statement and mark them right. Yes, right or wrong. The peasants joined the jamindaris in fighting the British. Next, the sepoys perceived a threat to their religion by British rule. Next, the middle and upper class Indians were the beneficiaries of the British rule. Next, the exploitation of the most sections of the Indians was the long standing reason, but the episode of greased cartridges provided the immediate reason for the revolt to break out. Next question: where write in about 50 words when, where, and how the uprising started. Next side heading: leadership. The storm centers of the revolt were Delhi, Kanpur, Lucknow, Bareilly, Jhansi, and Arha. All these places threw up their own leaders who for all practical purposes remained independent, even though they accepted the suzerainty of Emperor Bahadur Shah. Bakht Khan. In Delhi, Bahadur Shah was the leader, but the real power lay with the soldiers. Bakht Khan, who had led the revolt of the soldiers at Bareilly, arrived in Delhi on 3rd July 1857. From that date on, he exercised the real authority. He formed a court of soldiers composed of both Hindu and Muslim rebels, but even before that, the soldiers showed little regard for the authority of the emperor. Bahadur Shah deplored the army officers for their practice of coming into the court carelessly dressed and in utter disregard to the forms of respect to the royalty. Nana Sahib and Tanya Tope. At Kanpur, the revolt was led by Nana Sahib, the adopted son of Peshwa Bajirao II. The rebellious sepoys also supported Nana Sahib, and under his leadership, both the military and the civilian elements were united. They expelled the British from Kanpur and declared Nana Sahib as Peshwa, who acknowledged Bahadur Shah as the Emperor of India. Most of the fightings was, however, carried on by Tanya Tope on his behalf, and it was Tanya Tope who passed into popular legend as a great patriot and anti-British leader. The Begum of Awadh. At Lucknow, the Begum of Awadh provided the leadership and proclaimed his son Birjis Qadr as the Nawab of Awadh. But here again, the more popular leader was Maulvi Ahmadullah of Faizabad, who organized rebellions and fought the British. Rani Lakshmi Bai. Rani Lakshmi Bai of Jhansi was another great popular leader. She believed that she had been robbed of her ruling rights in defense of recognized Hindu law. Though she showed some hesitation at the initial stage, she fought valiantly once she joined the ranks of the rebels. Kunwar Singh. But the most representative and outstanding leader was Kunwar Singh of Arha. Under his leadership, the military and the civil rebellion were so completely fused that the British dreaded him more. With a war band of about 5,000, including about 600 Dhanpur sepoys and that rebellious Ramgarh State Battalion, he marched across the hundreds of miles to reach Mirzapur, Banda, and the vicinity of Kanpur. He reached up to Rewa state, and it was thought that as soon as Rewa fell to the rebels, the British could be forced to move to the south. But for some reason, Kunwar Singh did not move southwards. He returned to Banda and then back to Arha, where he engaged and defeated the British troops. He was seriously injured and died on 27th April 1858 in his central house in the village of Jagdishpur. Continuation, page number 45. The unknown martyrs. Apart from these acknowledged leaders who are remembered for their patriotism and courage, there were many unknown and unacknowledged but no less violent leaders among the sepoys, peasantry, and the petty jamindars. They also fought the British with exemplary courage to expel them from India. Peasants and sepoys laid down their lives for the cause of their country, forgetting their religious and caste difference and rising above their narrow personal interests. Next heading, defeat. The British captured Delhi on 20 September 1857. Even before this, the rebels had suffered many reverses in Kanpur, Agra, Lucknow, and some other places. These earlier reverses did not dampen the rebel spirit, but the fall of Delhi, on the other hand, struck a heavy blow to them. It now becomes clearly why the British concentrated with so much attention to retain Delhi at all costs, and for this they suffered heavily both in men and material. In Delhi, Emperor Bahadur Shah was taken a prisoner and the royal princes were captured and butchered one by one. All the great leaders of the revolt fell. Nana Sahib was defeated at Kanpur, after which the escaped to Nepal early in 1859 and nothing was heard of him afterwards. Tanya Tope escaped into the jungles of central India, where he carried on bitter guerrilla warfare until April 1859, where he was betrayed by a Jamindar friend and captured while asleep. He was hurriedly tried and put to death on 15th April 1859. The Rani of Jhansi died on the fields of battle on 17th June 1858. By 1859, Kundar Singh, Bakht Khan, Khan Bahadur Khan of Bareilly, Maulvi Ahmadullah were all died, while the Begum of Awadh escaped to Nepal. By the end of 1859, the British authority over India was re-established fully and firmly. Next heading, page number 46, the causes of failure. There were many causes which led to the collapse of their mighty rebellion. Here we list some of them to you. First, lack of unified programming and ideology. The rebellion swept off the British system of government and administration in India, but the rebels did not know what to create in its place. They had no forward looking plan in mind. This made them rely on the outmoded feudal system with Bahadur Shah at its head. The other prominent leaders of rebellion like Nana Sahib, Begum of Awadh, Rani of Jhansi, etc. were also representatives of the old feudal world. This system had lost its vitality and was unable to withstand the onslaught of the British. It was because of the failure of the rulers that the British had earlier been able to conquer almost the whole of India. Reliance on these elements made it difficult for the rebel forces to create a new sense of unity among the Indian people, which alone could have created a viable alternative to the British rule. Next, lack of unity among the Indians. As mentioned above, no broad based unity among the Indian people could emerge. While sepoys of the Bengal army were revolting, some soldiers in Punjab and South India fought on the side of the British to crush these rebellions. Similarly, there were no accompanying rebellions in most of eastern and southern India. The Sikhs also did not support the rebels. All these groups had their reason to do so. The possibility of the revival of Mughals' authority created a fear among the Sikhs who had faced so much oppression at the hands of the Mughals. Similarly, the Rajput chieftains in Rajasthan and Nizams in Hyderabad were no much harassed by the Marathas that they dreaded the revival of Maratha power. Beside this, there were some elements of the peasantry that had profited from the British rule. They supported the British during the revolt. The Jamindars of Bengal Presidency were the creations of the British and had all the reason to support them. The same applied to the big merchants of Calcutta, Bombay, and Madras who did not go over the rebels but supported the British. Next, lack of support from the educated India. The modern educated Indians also did not support the revolt because, in their view, the revolt was backward looking. This educated middle class was the product of the British system of education, and they believed mistakenly that the British would lead the country towards modernization. Next, disunity among the leaders. The main problem, however, was lack of unity in the ranks of rebels themselves. Their leaders were suspicious and jealous of each other and often indulged in petty quarrels. The Begum of Awadh, for example, quarreled with Maulvi Ahmadullah, and the Mughal princes with the Sepoy generals. Azimullah, the political advisor of the Nana Sahib, asked him not to visit Delhi lest he be overshadowed by the Emperor Bahadur Shah. The selfishness and narrow perspectives of the leaders sapped the strength of the revolt and prevented its consolidation. Next, military superiority of the British. Another major factor for the defeat of the rebels was the British superiority in arms. The British imperialism at the heights of its power the world over and supported by the most of the Indian princes and chiefs provide militarily too strong for the rebels, while the rebels were lacking in discipline and a central command. The British continued to have a constant supply of disciplined soldiers, war material, and money from British Sheer courage could not win against a powerful and determined enemy who planned its strategy skillfully. Because of ill discipline, the rebels lost more men and material than the British in every encounter. Many sepoys, seeing that the British had a upper hand, left for their villages. These were the main factors responsible for the failure of the revolt. Next heading: impact. Despite the fact that the revolt of 1857 failed, it gave a severe jolt to the British administration in India. The structure and policies of the re established British rule were in many respects drastically changed. First, transfer of power. The first major change was the power of govern India passed from the East India Company to the British Crown through an Act of 1858. Now, a Secretary of State for India, aided by a council, was to be responsible for the government of India. Earlier, this authority was violated by the directors of the company. Next, changes in military organization. The second drastic change was effected in the army. Steps were taken to prevent any further revolt by the Indian soldiers. Firstly, the number of European soldiers was increased and fixed at one European to two Indian soldiers in Bengal army and 2 to 5 in Bombay and Madras army. Moreover, the European troops were kept in key geographical and military positions. The crucial branches of the army, like artillery, were put exclusively in European hands. Secondly, the organization of the India section of the army was now based on the policies of divide and rule. Regiments were creation on the basis of caste, community, and region to prevent the development of any nationalistic feeling among the soldiers. Next, divide the rules. These policies of divide and rule was also introduced in the civilian population, since the British thought that the revolt was a conspiracy hatched by the Muslim. The latter were severely punished and discriminations made against them in public appointments and in other areas. This policy was later reversed and a belated APPEASEMENT appeasement of Muslims began. A policy of PREFERENTIAL preferential treatment of the Muslims was adopted towards the end of the 19th century. These policies created problems for Indian freedom struggle and contributed to the growth of communalism. Next heading: new policy towards the princes. Another important change was in the British policies towards the princely states. The early policies of annexation was now abandoned, and the rulers of these states were now authorized to adopt heirs. This was done as a reward to the native rulers who had remained loyal to the British during revolt. However, this authority of the Indian rulers over particular territories was completely subordinated to the authority of the British, and they were converted into a broad of privileged dependents. Next, search for new friends. Besides these changes, the British now turned to the most reactionary groups among the Indians, like the Jamindaris, princes, and landlords, for strengthening their fortune in the country. In fact, the revolt of 1857 brought to the surface the real reactionary nature of the British rule in the India. It made most of the Indian realize that the British rule in India was essentially anti-people, and it was bonded to be oppressive and hostile, hostile to their national interest. Continuation, page number 49, side heading assignment. Having discussed various aspects of the rebellion, let us in the end see how the events of 1857 has been interpreted by the contemporary officials as well as by subsequent scholars. The nature of the 1857 uprising aroused fierce fierce controversy from the very outset. The official British explanation was the Bengal army had mutinied and civil disturbances were caused by the breakdown of law and order machinery. Many officials thought that it was only a mutiny, but this view was challenged by Benjamin Disraeli, the conservative leader, in July 1857. He said, "The decline and fall of empires are not affairs of greased cartridges. Such results are occasioned by adequate causes and by the accumulation of adequate causes." Then he queried, it is a military immunity or it is a national reward. The official view was challenged by the section of the British community in India also. Colonel G.B. Melson, who later completed J.W. Kai's History of Sepoy Wars, challenged the official theory of simple immunity. The crisis came. At first, apparently, a mere military immunity. It speedily changed its character and became a national insurrection. V.D. Savarkar, who gave a nationalist interpretation to the uprising, asserted in 1909 that it was the Indian War of Independence. Savarkar's views were supported by J.B. Chowdhury, who in his writings demonstrated that 1857 was a rising of the people. In fact, the historiographic traditions in India soon accepted the line of argument. A discordant note was, however, struck by R.C. Mujumdar. He refused to recognize 1857 as a war of independence. His view was that to regard the outbreak of 1857 as either national in character or a war of independence of India betrays a lack of true knowledge of the history of Indian people in the 19th century. Some historians have held the Muslim elite was responsible for inciting the trouble. Outram regarding the revolt as a Muslim conspiracy exploiting Hindu grievances. Let another school of thought believe that during the revolt the people were fighting not only against the British but also against the feudal structure. The backsliding of these feudal chiefs led to collapse of the revolt. Tamiz Kadaldun wrote, it was crushed so easily because of betrayal by the propertized classes. Latter, historiographically, though accepting the popular character of the revolt, laid emphasis on its backward-looking character. Bipin Chandra
has stretched this point. The entire movement lacks a unified and forward-looking programming to be implemented after the capture of power. Tara Chand was more explicit when he wrote the revolt of 1857 was the last attempt of an effective order to recover its departed glory. Percival Spear added, and it has been asserted to have been a purely military outbreak product jointly by the grievances and indiscipline of Indian troops and the folly of the British military authorities. It is in fact an anachronism to describe the Mutiny as the first essay towards modern independence. It was rather in its political aspects the last effort of the old conservative India. These, however, are only some of the interpretations offered. The debate is still going on. We hope to enrich and enlighten by future research on the rebellion of 1857. Check your progress too. Page number 50. Write a small note on the space between below on the leaders of rebellion. What were some of the main reasons for the defeat of such a mighty rebellion? Write in about 100 words. Page number 51. Did the events of 1857 leave any impact on the Indian society? Write in the space given below. Let us sum up the side heading. Let us sum up. The event of 1857, which we have discussed in the unit, are important not only because they represented the crystallization of popular feelings against the alien rule, but also because of many changes that they produced in the country. These changes pertained not only to the policy formulation and the political structure, but also to popular belief, ideas, and attitude regarding the nature of British rule. The invisibility of the British rule was shattered once for all, and the stage was set for an organized and long drawn out struggle against the alien rule. This led to the beginning of the national movement, which ultimately ended the foreign rule and brought independence to the country in 1947. Side heading keywords: appeasement, act or practice of trying to prevent someone from harming you by giving them what they want. Pacification. Communalism, an ideology of a group which aims at advancing the interest of an religious community or caste at the expense of another caste or religious community. Crystallization, a process by which the idea or opinion becomes fixed and defined in one's mind. Mobilize, to bring people together for achieving a definite objective. Perspective, a particular way of thinking about or viewing something. ESP, especially one that is influenced by one's belief and experiences. Reactionary, something opposed to progress. SUZERAINTY, suzerainty, predominance. Uprising, a violent outburst against established authority. Vicious circle, a difficult situation that has an effect which create new problem, which in turn recreate the original problem. Answer to question. Next heading, answer to check your progress exercises. This is the last page number 51. Thank you. Continuation, page number 49, subheading Assessment. Having discussed various aspects of the rebellion, let us in the end see how the events of 1857 have been interpreted by the contemporary officials as well as by the subsequent scholars. The nature of the 1857 uprising aroused fierce controversy from the very outset. The official British explanation was that only the Bengal army had mutinied and civil disturbances were caused by the breakdown of law and order machinery. Many officials thought that it was only a mutiny, but this view was challenged by Benjamin Disraeli, the conservative leader, in July 1857. He said, "The decline and fall of emperors are not affairs of greased cartridges. Such results are occasioned by adequate causes and by the accumulation of adequate causes." Then he queried, it is a military mutiny or it is a national revolt. The official view was challenged by a section of the British community in India also. Colonel G.B. Melson, who later completed J.W. Calley's History of the Sepoy War, challenged the official theory of simple mutiny. The crisis came at first apparently a mere military mutiny. It speedily changed its character and became a national insurrection. V.D. Savarkar, who gave a nationalist interpretation to the uprising, asserted in 1909 that it was the Indian War of Independence. Savarkar's views were supported by S.B. Chowdhury, who in his writings demonstrated that 1857 was a rising of the people. In fact, the historiographic tradition in India soon accepted this line of argument. A discordant note was, however, struck by R.C. Mujumdar. He refused to recognize 1857 as a war of independence. His view was that to regard the outbreak of 1857 as either national in character or a war of independence of India betrays a lack of true knowledge of the history of Indian people in the 19th century. Some historians have held that the Muslim elite was responsible for inciting the trouble. Outram regarding the revolt as a Muslim conspiracy exploiting Hindu grievances. Yet another school of thought believed that during the revolt the people were fighting not only against the British but also against the feudal structure. The backsliding of these feudal chiefs led to the collapse of the revolt. Talmis Khaldun wrote, it was crushed so easily because of betrayal by the PROPERTIED propertied classes. Latter, historiographically, though accepting the popular character of the revolt, laid emphasizes its backward-looking character. Bipin Chandra has stretched this point. The entire movement lacked a unified and forward-looking programming to be implemented after the capture of the power. Tara Chand was more explicit when he wrote the revolt of 1857 was the last attempt of an effective order to recover its departed glory. Percival Spear added, and it has been asserted to have been a purely military outbreak produced jointly by the grievances and indiscipline of the Indian troops and the folly of the British military authorities. It is in fact an Anachronism to describe the unity as the first essay towards modern independence. It was rather in its political aspect the last effort of the old conservative India. These, however, are only some of the interpretations offered. The debate is still going on. We hope to be enriched and enlightened by future research on the rebellion of 1857. Check your progress. Question number 1. Write a small note on the space given below on the leaders of the rebellion. Second question. What were some of the main reasons for the defeat of such mighty rebellion? Write in about 100 words. End of page 50. Next page 51. Did the events of 1857 leave any impact on the Indian society? Write in the space given below. Next subheading. Let us sum up. The events of 1857, which we have discussed in the unit, are important not only because they represented the crystallization of popular feelings against the alien rule, but also because of many changes that they produced in the country. These changes pertain only to the policy formulation and the political structure, but also to popular belief, ideas, and attitude regarding the nature of British rule. The invisibility of the British rule was shattered once for all, and the stage was set for an organized and long drawn out struggle against the alien rule. This led to the beginning of the national movement, which ultimately ended the foreign rule and brought independence to the country in 1947. Next subheading. Keywords. Appeasement. Act or practice of trying to prevent someone from harming you by giving them what they want. Pacification. Communalism. An ideology of a group which aims at advancing the interest of a religious community or caste at the expense of another caste or religious community. Crystallization, a process by which an idea or opinion becomes fixed and definite in one's mind. Mobilize, to bring people together for achieving a definite objective. Perspective, a particular way of thinking about or viewing something. ESP, one that is influenced by one's belief and experiences. Reactionary, something opposed to progress. Suzerainty, predominance. Uprising, a violent outburst against established authority. Vicious circle, a difficult situation that has an effect which creates new problem which in true recreate the original problems. Next subheading. Answer to check your progress exercises. End of the topic. Thank you.